Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Vish and welcome to my worst and disappointing books of 2022. So, I think you all know that I'm not fond of talking about books I don't like, but in my own way, I think putting these books out there, maybe someone else will like them better than I will. But of course, there is one book in particular, which is my worst book of 2022, that I would rather not people read. So we'll leave that for last. However, I have 5 disappointing books and 7 worst books. And you'll see in my best books as well, I split up my best and surprising books as well. But I really want to showcase these books in that way because not all of them are worst. However, they are still on the negative side, aka disappointing. So I want to showcase both of them. Also, being my worst and disappointing books, I don't have a lot of them with me because I've unhauled most of them. So let's get into the disappointing books first. So the first disappointing book that I want to talk about is The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. I gave this 2.5 stars and it is not my first N.K. Jemisin. I have read The City We Became before and I DNF'd that one just because I wasn't vibing with the setting and the premise. However, I thought this one would be good for me because it's dream magic. It had a desert atmosphere. However, I did like her writing. The plot just wasn't it. It was a very basic, simple plot. The magic system was interesting. However, it was the characters that really let me down. I did not like any of the characters. There was a relationship in here that I absolutely despised. It was very uncomfortable to read, at least for me. And overall, it was just really disappointing because I've heard a lot of good things about N.K. Jemisin and I had quite high hopes for this duology. I liked the third book because I just clung to a romance that was in the second book, but really, The Killing Moon, the first book, really disappointed me. I didn't explain too much about The Killing Moon, but essentially it's an adult fantasy that follows multiple different characters. The characters we follow are from 2 different, I guess, races or cultures. The first 2 perspectives that we follow are dream gatherers. One is an apprentice and one is a certified dream gatherer. And those 2 are trying to find out who is killing these people in the city because people are blaming them. The dream gatherers are killing these people. Then we have our third perspective, and I cannot for the life of me remember their names. I'm so sorry, but our third perspective, she's an ambassador for her city, her culture, and they have a big secret about the government of the dream gatherers that she wants to expose. That's essentially what this whole book is about. I just thought it was going to be a little bit more epic. It was just a very generic plot. It was predictable. So yeah, I gave this 2.5 stars. I still want to check out the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, so I'm not giving up on her totally. Alright, the next book I want to talk about is Electric Idol by Katie Robert. So I really like Katie Robert. I've been reading her books for a while now. I started with the Wicked Villain series. I think I have 2 more books left in that series, but I absolutely loved Neon Gods. It's like one of my favorite Persephone and Hades retelling, and this is the second book in the Dark Olympus series, and this just really disappointed me because I have an expectation and a standard for Katie Robert when it comes to her stories and also the level of smut, I will say, because this is a adult contemporary romance, even though it's a Greek mythology retelling because our characters are from the Greek myths. However, there is no like magic or anything like that set in a contemporary world. So this book follows Eros and Psyche, and it is their love story, and it's a whole marriage of convenience, and the execution was done well. There was a lot of angst in here. I really like that. However, there was a lot of miscommunication in this, which I don't like anyway. And I'm not gonna lie, the smut in this was very vanilla because it is a Katie Robert book, and Katie Robert is not described as vanilla. This one was very vanilla, and it kind of put me off for the rest of the series. I do have the third book in my physical TBR. I would like to give that a try, but if it's kind of the same vein as Electric Idol, I probably won't continue with the Dark Olympus series anymore. But because of that, it just was a really disappointing book. I expected more. Like I said, I have a standard for Katie Roberts, and she just didn't meet that standard. Next up is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. So I had high expectations for this because a few of my friends really loved this book. So this is an adult fantasy that takes place in a library in hell where unfinished books reside, and the characters in those books try to escape to go and see their author on Earth and convince them to finish their book. But the librarian in here doesn't allow the characters to do that. However, one escapes and they go on a quest to get this character back. There's more to this story. So that basic synopsis is what I have expected. It's what is on the back of here, so that's what I expected. I just didn't expect the whole other side to this story, and I felt like that's because I don't want to spoil it, right? So that whole other side of this story is not what I'm expecting, but also it just wasn't as well done as other medias. I can't really say because this is a spoiler. I just think that other medias, TV shows, other books have done it better than in this book. So I thought it was just poorly executed and I wasn't really interested in this. I wasn't interested in the characters, nothing. So I give this, I think, a 3-star because again, it was just in the middle of the road for me. I was disappointed because I had high expectations for this, but other people will love it because if you love a library setting in hell, like, you would love this. I just didn't have any emotional attachment to this book, to the characters, to the story. I'm sure other people will, to be honest. It's just a whole me thing and not the book. The second last disappointing book that I want to talk about is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I know. So the reason why this is disappointing because again, I had a standard for TJ Klune because I loved The House in the Cerulean Sea, but I picked this up having that standard and having that expectation, but it wasn't like that at all. So I already knew this one is going to have a very different atmosphere to House in the Cerulean Sea, which I really liked the atmosphere. I liked the concept that we had in here. It's basically a tea shop where souls come in and the owner of the tea shop helps and guides them to the afterlife. So this is an adult fantasy that follows a main character who is not well liked in the real world in his life. So when he dies, no one comes to his funeral and he is very much in denial about his death, and he goes to this tea shop where the owner of this tea shop helps him go through this process of death. There's also other things involved while he's there because he's given a week for him to process his death before he has to move on. And I'm not gonna lie, I did really enjoy the character relationships in this, but not as much as I would like to, like in The House in the Cerulean Sea. But overall, I did enjoy this and I will continue in his whole like cozy adult fantasy series. I know there's a next book which is called In the Life of Puppets, which I definitely do want to read because they do have that sense of coziness. And now that my expectations have shifted a little bit because I expected the same as House in the Cerulean Sea, but that's just a whole different level. So me shifting my expectations, I think I'm gonna really enjoy the next book. This gives me a lot of Legends and Lattes vibes in terms of like the coziness and the tea shop aspect. So if you like that aspect of Legends and Lattes, maybe give this a try and see what you think. There's a lot of, I guess, dark topics such as grief and depression, I think so, in this. So just remember that going to this. And the last disappointing book I want to talk about is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. I know, surprising. So I think this book and Beneath the Sugar Sky within the Wayward Children series are two of my least favorite of this series. I think Beneath the Sugar Sky is like my least favorite, and this one is like probably number 2. Me forgetting that the Odd Books takes place in Eleanor West's home for wayward children, something like that. It takes place in the school, and I didn't realize going into this because I was so excited to go back into a world that we can explore. That was not it. This takes place in a school. So this is an adult fantasy novella in a series called the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. And this is the 7th book, I think. I can't quite remember. Again, this takes place in the school and we have our main character Cora, who is in the school, but she kind of wants to escape the drowned gods, which is where her world is, and the only way to do that is kind of just forget, constantly deny the existence of it. So she transfers to another school that does that. So they take in children and they basically brainwash them of their experiences through the doors. So she goes in there. It's very bleak atmosphere, and while I like the change in setting, I'm just never a fan of the books that takes place in the schools, because I'm way more interested in the other worlds than I am with just the normal plot. I guess it is disappointing in the fact that there was just not a lot of plot except for just being in that school and trying to get out. Literally it. Sure, she made some friends along the way. We did see a character that was in book 6 in this book, which I appreciated, but yeah, I just did not like this book very much. It was just okay, which again is very disappointing. So I gave this 3 stars as well. Those are the disappointing books. So now let's move on to the worst books, which is like 2-star and under. You know what I mean? All right, the first book I want to talk about is Eidolon by Grace Draven. So this is the second book to the Wraith King series. I'm not sure. The first book is Radiance. Eidolon is the second book of this series, and I just didn't think the fantasy plot in this was necessary. I feel like the second book was made just to be made. It didn't need to be made at all, because the fantasy plot was just thrown in there at the end of Radiance, like for no reason, just thrown in there. So Eidolon was the consequence of the ending of the first book. So this book was just not needed. However, I did own it, so I just wanted to read it. And I did enjoy the interactions of the couple from Radiance. I just, again, did not enjoy the fantasy plot in this. I just didn't think it was necessary. So I gave it, I think, 3 stars. I'm not continuing on with the series at all, because again, it just continues on with a fantasy plot that I'm just not interested in. The next worst book is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. So this was another read in the beginning of the year that I just did not like. I gave this 2 stars. This is an adult fantasy novel series that is called The Magic of the Lost, and the second book actually comes out this year. So the reason why I still have this, right, is I saw the potential in this in terms of the magic system. I mean, it's literally called Magic of the Lost, and the potential of the magic system I feel like I'm really gonna love. So I kept it just to see what my friends say about the second book, and I might potentially pick up the second book. So we follow 2 main characters. So we follow Terrain and Luca. Luca is part of the royal family. She's trying to win her throne back from her uncle, and Terrain is part of the army of the royal family. So both Luca and Terrain go to this country that has essentially been slaved and conquered, and that is Terrain's homeland. But because she was taken away from her homeland from such a young age, she doesn't see it as her home, and people on the homeland doesn't see Terrain and the rest of the soldiers as part of their world and culture, because they feel like the soldiers are traitors for being with the royal family. It's kind of essentially like the British Empire versus them. So the soldiers are in the British Empire. It's not really British Empire. I'm just giving an example. The soldiers are within the British Empire, and the people don't like the soldiers because they're with the British Empire and they've conquered their homeland. That's the example I'm giving. However, the 2 characters make some very, very stupid decisions that I did not like. It was very messy, and again, I did not like that. And I just wasn't enjoying the characters at all. And because I was enjoying so much of my time with this in the first half, and it went into a different direction that I did not want it to go, because I wanted to explore more of the magic system and the weird area of the homeland that no one goes to because it's abandoned, and it seems like a David world, you know what I mean? I'm just like, let's just go there, but they didn't. This is very much a military book instead of a fantasy book, which is fine. I do like military fantasy. It's just I want it to go somewhere else and not where it went. So I just did not like this. But I really want to know if we explore that David Bode-esque world with the magic, and I want to know if we do that in book 2. The third book I want to talk about is Even If We Break. Ooh, I cannot remember the author's name. I'm so sorry, but this is the picture. This is the book. So this is a YA thriller book, and at the time I didn't know what I wanted to read, so I just randomly generated a number and this book came out on my spreadsheet, and I wouldn't pick this up normally I've been forced to pick it up. So I tried it because I'm not really a fan of YA thrillers. So I gave this a try. So this is a YA thriller with an isolated setting where 5 friends are reunited to play their D&D game in this cabin for the weekend. And while they're at this cabin, one of their friends is murdered, and they have to figure out who murdered while one by one gets, I will say the atmosphere in this was really, really well done. I just think it was just predictable. And the one thing that really, really irked me, and which is why this book is on this list, I gave it 2 stars, is that the author named one of the characters Ever. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? So whenever, you see? Yeah. Anyway, her name is called Ever. And whenever she uses the name in tandem with whenever, wherever, whoever, just ever, in tandem with her name Ever, it just pissed me off. And I hated it so much, and it was so predictable, and I just did not enjoy this book whatsoever. I read it really, really quickly just to finish it. It was still entertaining because of the atmosphere, but other than that, no, I did not like this. Would not recommend. Next up is a surprise to everyone, including me, and that is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is a adult mystery book that is supposed to be like a cozy mystery because it takes place in a retirement village, and 4 friends in this retirement village meet up once a week to discuss opened murder cases. And one day a murder actually happens in their village, and the 4 of them take it upon themselves to figure out who's the murderer. Sounds great, right? Well, I really enjoyed the mystery aspect in this because I did not see it coming. I did not predict anything. I really liked the way the mystery revealed itself, but I just did not enjoy the characters, which is supposed to be what this book is known for. I did not connect with any of the characters. I didn't like any of the characters. It was just whatever. I was debating putting this in disappointing, and it could really be in disappointing and worse because I gave this 2.5 stars. Like, I did not enjoy this whatsoever. I just appreciated how the mystery panned out, and that was really it. I'm not continuing on with the series, obviously, because why would I? I would definitely still recommend someone pick it up. It just wasn't for me. The next book I want to talk about is Lovely Bad Things by Trisha Wolfe. I gave this 2 stars. Really, it should be 1 star. I didn't enjoy anything about this. Nothing. This is a adult dark romance which essentially follows 2 characters, Helene and Callum. So Helene is a forensic pathologist, is she? I'm not sure, but she works for the police, and she is working this case, and she finds out basically Callum was a PhD philosophy professor. He was the one doing the murder, so she put him in jail. However, present day, she comes across another murder case, and it's to do with that same murder case that Callum was involved with. So she has to work with Callum in order to solve this case. I hated both of them. And there was so much philosophy in this that I was like, is this a philosophy book or a romance book? There was so much philosophy in this in order to solve the murder case, which I appreciated, but everything just went over my head. So there are a couple of reasons why I really hate this book. One was the philosophy thing, and the second thing is that they try and find the murderer or be in the murderer's mind by doing these like weird rituals that turn very sexual, which was so weird. It was just a really bad. I didn't like it at all. Would not recommend. It's a no from me. Alright, the last book I want to talk about before we get to the #1 worst book is The Deep by Nick Cutter. So this is a adult horror novel that takes place in the Mariana Trench. So there's this virus going around in this world called forgetting, where people just start to forget things. Even like their organs start forgetting what they were supposed to do, and eventually they die. And there's no cure for this. However, recently in the Mariana Trench, they think they found a cure down there. However, the members of the lab in the Mariana Trench is not responding to the people upstairs, or upstairs, up above the sea. One of the scientists that is in the lab, his brother, which is our main character, has been called to go down there to find out what's happening. And he goes down there and things unfold. So this whole book is so weird. I liked the beginning part of it, of the backstory of a main character and like getting to know him and him going down there. The atmosphere was really great, and then it took a turn that I did not like whatsoever. I was like, whoa. I can't tell you what it is, obviously, because it's spoilers. I would not recommend this book for anyone. I will say no. I would recommend his other book, which is The Troop. If you don't like body horror, don't read that book. But if you like body horror, read The Troop, but do not read The Deep. No, I would not recommend it for anyone. I just think that the direction that it went was so bizarre and out of this world that it just did not work. It did not work. It was so confusing. It felt literally like a fever dream. It was so weird. I think I gave it 2 stars because I like the beginning part of this a lot. Alrighty, let's move on to the worst book I've read this year, and that is 365 Days by, I cannot remember her name, I'm so sorry, but it's right there on the screen. So this is an adult romance novel that I read in the middle of the year. This is essentially about a girl who gets kidnapped by a mafia boss to stay with him for 365 days for some reason that I cannot remember right now, but it was a stupid reason. So she has to stay with him for 365 days. Spoiler alert, she doesn't stay with him for 365 days, so I don't understand why this book was called 365 Days, because it is false advertisement. And it was just so cringy. So cringy. All our main character does is drink, pass out, hurts herself, passes out, does something else, passes out, because she has a heart condition. So everything that she does, she passes out. So the most of the book, she's just passed out, and days pass by. Again, not 365 days. No. And this was very insta-lovey and insta-lusty, which I'm not a fan. I love a good slow burn. And the whole baby girl, I can't take it. I couldn't take it. It was so cringe. I think it's Don Massimo. I think that was his name. No. Not it. I love a good dark brooding man, but this man was, no, he was a douche. I guess this was my first foray into mafia romance, but I feel like this shouldn't count at all. I gave this 2 stars, but really it should be a 1 star. And there was a trope in it that I absolutely hate, and it was in this, and that also added to my rage. I feel like with everyone that has rage against Den of Vipers, I have the same amount of rage for 365 days, you know? So yeah, that is all the books that were very disappointing to me and the worst books I read this year. If you made it to the end of the video, let's put any type of sad face emojis, because we're sad that we wasted a lot of time reading these books. But also, let me know what are some of the worst books you read or disappointing books that you read down in the comments. And if you've read any of the books that I just mentioned, let's rage about them down in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. All my socials and my Patreon is linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time with my best and surprising books of 2022. Bye!